Record on. Excellent. It's official. Welcome to, it's March. Oh my God, I almost said February. Welcome to March's Zoom community call for Shred Strong. Thanks for joining. I was trying to do something new and do like a little lunchtime chat in case folks want to just take a break from work, reset, and kind of, hop on in whenever they can. But the lunchtime chats probably be a little bit more efficient, I should say, just because again, most of us are on lunch, we're working and things like that. So that was the intention of this, and also to help some of the European counterparts on the team, to maybe help make a time that's not like close to 11 p.m. their local time or midnight their local time. But thanks for joining me. A couple of you that have joined, I appreciate it. First things first, let me just do a quick little recap on like what the heck we're doing, what the heck is muscular endurance, and why are we incorporating this in the phase right now. And just to let you know, like we've gone through some strength phases, a lot of stability building, strength phases, core work, all of that to kind of lay the groundwork. And now what the purpose is with muscular endurance is you're going to be doing a little bit more higher rep in terms of the main lifts. So a lot of the like deadlift movements, squatting patterns, even some of the lunge movements and things like that, pressing, pushing, all of that. Those main lifts of the day are going to be, instead of focusing on you lifting heavier and making it more strength endurance or making it more strength centric, now it's going to be higher reps with a lower weight. And the reason for that is because it's going to get your body used to kind of wrapping things out. And that's ultimately partnered with the idea of you being on the bike more. It's springtime. Well, except for Veronica, like she already has amazing weather right now. And darn you. But like for folks I know who are in California and have like warmer climates, maybe in the Southwest, other than the Denver area, you're already riding, and this will only complement it more. But you're going to notice the workouts are going to be a little bit more, there's going to be basically one less set of work or one less grouping or superset of work. And that is because we don't want the volume to be too much. All right. So because you might be biking more, or you might be still finishing out ski season, things like that, or snowboard season, we don't want the volume to be too much. So that way, when you are starting to do more cardio centric and more riding and things like that, then you're feeling like just worn out and like you're not able to recover effectively. So this is where we're kind of tempering things a little bit more. All right. So tempering the volume, still working on higher reps, lower weight. So please don't try to like lift for 8 to 12 reps what you just did on the strength cycle in the last phase. That's kind of why I was trying to like hint to everyone in the instructions, like, please don't do that. Like, please don't be a hero. I'm sure you could probably lift that much, but that's not really the goal. We just want to get your muscles, especially your legs and, your glutes and things like that. We just want to get those muscle groups feeling like they can just fire repetitively. All right. Personally, I love strength cycles, don't get me wrong, but I love muscular endurance cycles because I know that means that I'm getting closer to starting to cycle more and bike more and just be outside more. And that makes me very happy, especially after winter. Winter always kind of hits me a little hard. I don't know about you all. But again, as always follow the reps in reserve, the RIR that I suggest. Try to get within that range as best as you can, and that will help dictate kind of what weight will work for you. And the first couple of weeks of every cycle, it's going to take a little bit of playing around and kind of testing it out and experimenting. But that's the fun part of in all of this, is just kind of see what works well for you. For me, like I'm getting back into kind of figuring out like what feels good for me. And it's taking me a little bit longer just because of my recovery, that kind of set me back a couple weeks. But just trying to be patient. So please know, even for me, like I have to kind of listen to my own advice, like, hey, just be patient. And utilize kind of what I can. All right. Now with the bike interval workouts, you're going to see a little bit of a change in the cadence, especially in the next cycle. I might give you some tips on like cadence work that you might want to work on, just so you can practice spinning a little bit faster. Because sometimes a spinning, faster cadence of your pedal stroke can really help, again, with you feeling like you can just pedal hard and pedal longer duration wise. And that's really where I want you to feel good come springtime and come that time that you're going to be biking more and things like that. All right. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But again, I'm trying to put some notes in there under the program tab, which is the kettlebell icon in the app. If you look in the app, it's on the bottom of, oh my God, here, where's it? It's the bottom, like little kettlebell here. Everything's backwards. There it is, the kettlebell right there. So that kettlebell icon will always give you instructions on kind of like what to expect. Like here we are, weeks 9 through 12 power. Great. It's 4 weeks long, and you can kind of scroll through there. The first couple of paragraphs, just as a quick little reminder, that's going to be what is evolving program to program. Some of the bullet points below that will also evolve program to program or cycle to cycle, but not as much. So don't think that you have to read everything. But again, I just like to have this as a resource in case you forget what the hell I said, or in case you forget what the heck we're doing, or whatever it is. Maybe you had a wild last 4 weeks, like I did, just with being sick and everything. So, do that. App is your friend. And of course, if you ever have any questions, a message away. You can either message me in the group or you can message me privately. Just know during the weekends, like obviously I don't really message as much, just to kind of get off technology a little bit more, trying to get better about that. But yeah, I'm always here for you if you ever have any questions, especially during the week. So that kind of covers that and kind of the why behind muscular endurance. Next thing, mobility. Am I the best at doing mobility myself? Absolutely not. But I am always reminded on how much better I feel when I do just incorporate even just a few moments a day. For me, because I am getting back into everything, I do have a little bit more aches than usual than I usually do, pre-COVID. But I will go ahead and say, that just encourages me even more to make the time to, kind of set aside for this. Now, mobility doesn't have to be something that you're spending 30 minutes on every day. However, I will go ahead and say if you enjoy yoga and you find joy in doing yoga, incorporate yoga. I know we even have a couple of yoga instructors who are in the group and they're like, hey, Jen, I love your mobility program. And I am going to include some of that stuff, after my yoga session, but hey, I'm going to do some yoga. By all means, do some yoga. I really, personally, I love yoga. Like 20 years ago, I even considered doing yoga instruction, right out of college, but I opted not to. But that's how much, I'm just saying that's how much I love yoga and I enjoy it. So if that brings you joy, you know how I am about finding movement that brings you joy. Incorporate that, please. But then please know that I'm starting to include 3 different programs or 3 different mobility programs in the cycle right now. And generally they're being broken down into the typical post-ride unwind. That's going to be pretty standard across the board because I want folks to get into a routine, because this isn't about hey, let's mix it up every week or let's mix it up even every 4 weeks when it comes to mobility. Not generally. I want your post-ride unwind to be something that you can just go to and it's almost autopilot. And the reason I do the post-ride unwind as a general staple is because it hits kind of everything that usually can bother people after a ride or after even weight training, honestly. It includes the couch stretch, which I really recommend for folks if you do have low back aches and pains or hip flexor tightness. Now, of course, hip flexor tightness can also indicate a little bit of hip flexor weakness, but don't worry, we're working on that in the program. And then there's a lot of hip internal rotation. I've got some IT band stretching and then side lying rotations, which help with your spinal rotation. There is going to be some foam rolling and lacrosse ball, as well as some parasympathetic breath work at the end. So feel free to, hop that in. I might mix up a couple of those things going forward, especially as we are starting to ride a little bit more, because indoor riding is going to kind of trigger things differently than maybe outdoor riding will. All right. Indoor riding, sometimes we can feel it a little bit more in our lower back and things like that, because we're not getting out of our saddle like we normally do on the trail or whatever. If some folks are doing more indoor riding right now, which I know is kind of the case for many of us who do have access to a trainer or Peloton or something like that. Now, there are some other things that I did include. And if you look up mobility, so there's 2 mobility sequences. There's the post-ride unwind as well as the stretch, roll, and breathe. The stretch, roll, and breathe mobility routine is really just kind of a standardized thing that you can do after any strength session. Okay, this is just it's meant to keep you kind of happy. And again, it includes sideline rotations because any rotational work is going to be really good, as well as some things that we're kind of working on, like some piriformis stretching, which can help with a lot of the deadlifting and things like that we're doing, as well as child's pose, which is a very restorative pose anyways, in or out of yoga. There is some foam rolling and things like that as well. Now, a new one that I did start to include is I didn't put mobility in front of it though. So that's actually my fault. I need to go back and edit that. But it's called the hips and low back flow. And this hips and low back flow is, again, just I usually try to keep the sequence pretty short, like it's just like 3 to 4 movements. You can kind of go through it. Then you can always add on foam rolling if you need to afterwards. But this one just takes 4 minutes. And there's the walking hip and thoracic openers, which are also called, I've heard them called like Spider-Man. I've heard them be called like world's greatest stretch. Like it kind of has a couple different names. There's of course the couch stretch, because again, that can help with low back aches and pains, as well as hip flexor tightness. And then banded glute med stretch. This is going to feel really good, especially if you do have any low back aches and pains, or if you are starting to get a little bit more hip involvement. And then, of course, finishing off everything with parasympathetic breath work, because I know I'm going to sound like a hippie, but deep breath work is going to be so positive for you and really everyone. So I can't emphasize enough. It just helps to encourage some stress management and things like that. Nothing against hippies, of course, but you know what I mean. I do have a hippy dippy side of me, but it is also supported by research and science. So I will go ahead and say that. And on that note, with mobility, my rule of thumb, and I did talk about this on Monday when I was on my way to Indy, my rule of thumb for incorporating mobility is, pick a sequence, maybe pick 2 sequences, whatever, might be ailing you. Grab one and do it at night. Maybe do it while you're watching Netflix or TV, or maybe while you're waiting for dinner to prep. You can kind of do it in the living room or whatever's near your kitchen, and just spend a moment, on one movement, because you don't have to do back-to-back movements for it to be effective or anything like that. Like a stretch is a stretch. But, do it, try to incorporate it into something that you're already doing. Another idea. So if you're not really much of a TV watcher, or, maybe you're not prepping dinner at home, that's fine. But if you spend time on your phone, another idea is like, okay, I'm going to mobilize while I'm scrolling Instagram or while I'm on Facebook or something like that. And I know it sounds so silly, but it's great, because then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of killing 2 birds. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to kill any birds with any stones, but like, you're doing 2 things at once, and it's benefiting you tremendously. So you're able to kind of get that little dopamine response, and, scroll social media if it makes you happy and you find it joyful. Great, do that. But then also try to see if you can incorporate some of those mobility routines in. And what's cool is you can utilize the app, if you want to use it as a resource for the mobility routines. You can use that in the background while you're also scrolling, so do one movement, scroll for a moment or 2 while you hold that movement, and then pull up the app, see what the next movement is, go back to scrolling, things like that. That is actually something that I did when I was trying to incorporate mobility a little bit more, is just, I made it a deal. Like, okay, I'm on social media, so how about let me reward myself with mobility while I'm doing social media scrolling. Just an idea. It doesn't work for everyone, but it could possibly work for you all. I know for me, it has worked, and it has worked for other clients of mine that I've worked with one-on-one. So it's just, again, it's all about building habits and kind of finding things that you're already doing and incorporating the mobility work in with it. Personal story here, I'm going to share for just a few seconds. Erin gives me a hard time. It doesn't give me a hard time. That's the wrong word. She laughs at me. She laughs at me when I'm brushing my teeth at night, because I will full on, I can't do it on this because I have my standing desk too high, but I will full on bring my foot up on the bathroom counter and like do a little hamstring stretch, or I will do the hamstring stretch and do some back rotation while I'm doing the hamstring stretch while I'm like brushing my teeth. Of course, don't do this. I don't suggest this if you have poor balance, all right? Because you have something in your mouth, it's a safety concern. I know I'm going to be safety Sally here for a moment. Do something that you feel comfortable doing, but I'm just letting you know, like, that's comfortable for me, is propping a foot up, doing a little bit of a hamstring stretch while I'm waiting for my toothbrush to buzz at me to move to the next section. If you're not comfortable putting your foot up on the counter, guess what? You can easily do some forward bends, and things like that. Obviously, you're going to have to keep your head a little bit more upright, but you can get a little bit of a hamstring stretch with that. So again, these are just ideas. to give you an idea on some examples of things that you're already doing in your day to day, and then try and incorporate something new. Because that's a really positive way to build a new habit, is just to kind of piggyback something that you want to incorporate into your day onto something that you're already doing. Okay. And then you can kind of make it a little bit of a reward scenario. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions, let me know. But those are some ideas that I have in terms of incorporating it into the day. Now, I'm going to open up to the floor for any questions, because I know Veronica had some questions about, like, if you're feeling any aches and pains in particular areas, like what might feel good for you. So feel free to unmute and we can do some Q&A.
Hey. So yeah, I've noticed that I have super achy hips after some of the movements in the Shred Strong program, like the plank with the hip dips. Like after doing some of those movements, I really had some achy hips, and I just maybe think I might have some weaknesses in there, and I would like any hip mobility suggestions that would help alleviate or make those movements a little bit easier.
Hell yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Because when you're having new movements added in, and like the hip dips, especially if you're sitting a little bit more, maybe your low back might be starting to kind of like lock up just a little bit more. Because I know I notice that if I'm sitting a little bit more than usual, my SI joint just kind of gets a little bit stiffer. At least is what my PT tells me. So I do sometimes feel it with the hip dip, because I actually did the hip dips earlier this week when I was in the hotel. And I was like, oh, I can tell that I flew, yesterday, for example. So with that, for me, now, of course, it kind of depends, because first of all, where do you feel it in your hip? Like, can you point to it? Like, is it outside or?
Let me kind of get up here a little bit, but I kind of start to feel it like of my hip ball joint up in this area.
Yeah. Okay.
Like anterior side of my body.
No, it's perfect. Because, like, just so people know, like that little area there, if you had the hip bone and you're kind of on that outside of that hip area there, there's a little bit of a combination that it can be for most folks. It could be your TFL, or it could be a little bit of your glute med. And the glute med is a very common weak spot. For me, according to my diagnosis with my PT, so I empathize with this. But also, I've seen it a lot with just some cyclists in general. Some strengthening might actually help. And actually, I've got this already on the docket for the next cycle. You just can't see it yet because I haven't dropped it yet in Tread Strong. But what I recommend is, side planks when you're on your side and you're planking. Now you're going to do a side plank, but you're going to focus on driving your heel up. And I did actually include this movement in a video that I did for Shredly. And I'm going to see, do I have room? My office is so tiny. I might be able to do this. Oh my God, I think I'll be able to do this. All right. So plank, boom. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm in a side plank, but I'm going to rotate that heel that's on the top leg up. And I'm going to do some external raises here. But rotating your heel up and angling that will actually bring the focus to more of your glute med. All right. And it could help feel a little bit better after doing, I would even include doing it after the hip dips. So if you're like, hey, the hip dip is a triggering event for me, let's go ahead and do some glute med strengthening after that. And usually, rule of thumb is like anywhere between 8 and 15 reps per side can help, but it's the angling of that heel that can help. I'm a little winded after like going downstairs, and now I'm like walking or talking rather, so I apologize if I'm breathing a little heavy. But the angling of the heel is going to be the most important. Thanks, Katie. Oh, you wanted to ask here. Hold on a second. And I can answer the question after you hop off too. Neck mobility or strength? Ooh, yes. Okay, I'll get it. If you want to catch the recording or you want to stay on. But I would.
Yeah, I'll catch the recording. Thanks.
Okay. All right, bye.
Bye, Veronica. Bye.
But yeah, I would actually, dare I say, like try to incorporate a little bit of that strengthening and just see if it helps. Because there's going to be a couple of other things I'm also going to incorporate just based on some feedback. Because that's what I love about Shred Strong is I'll get some feedback from folks like, hey, I'm experiencing this. And I'm like, and then I start to see like a theme, like, oh, people are experiencing this. Like this is actually a pretty common, like weaker spot for folks. And I say weaker, not as a negative thing. It's just, it's positive feedback because the training program is giving us feedback on like what we need to focus on next. So I will program the Shred Strong program live. Like I will make adjustments for the next cycle based on everyone's feedback. So I'm so glad you said that. I appreciate that. Is it just in that spot? Any other areas where you're kind of feeling it a little bit?
Primarily in that spot, and I on one side more than the other, so probably just a little bit more weaker on one side than the other for whatever reason.
Do you feel it on your right side or left more? Okay, and that's pretty common. Another thing, not that I'm going to tell you how to drive, but another thing, like when you're driving, try to focus on having your left foot. Well, actually, do you have a 5-speed or 6-speed or a manual?
No.
Okay, most people don't, but I had to ask. Try to put your left foot on the dumb pedal if you can, because that will help kind of even your pelvis out a little bit while you're driving. It's just kind of a good habit to get in. I'm awful at that personally because I'm short, so like my foot barely hits the dumb pedal. But like, you know, if you're a normal sized human, which I know you are, you're a normal height, if not taller, and like it could be really beneficial to just kind of even things out. Don't expect it to feel better like immediately, but after a few weeks, like your body can kind of settle into that. But yeah, the right side can sometimes be a little bit more flared up, I'd say, for a majority of people that I'm working with, including myself, actually. So kind of a weird thing. Yeah, I can't help but think that like driving, especially based on like conversations I've had with PT over the years, driving might be like a little bit of an influence on that, which is so weird. But all right, does that help?
But yeah,
Yeah,
try.
give it a try. Yeah, give it a try. Because even for me, I don't know what I did here. It must be because of I'm so backwards. I look at myself, I'm like, wait. Yeah, give it a try because I notice almost. I don't like to use the word instant, but I do notice very quick positive feeling when I do the side plank with that heel lift, like with the abduction with the heel lift. Like it's kind of wild actually. So hopefully you'll have the same experience. But for those of you who can't see the comment right now from Katie, she had to hop off because of lunch. She wanted to ask about neck mobility or strength. She feels like during the core exercises, like the crunch with weight and legs up, things like that. I can't remember what it's called. She says, my neck is always first to tire out, cramp up, whatever, before my abs and core. She's going to watch the recording, blah, blah, blah. Da, da, da. Okay. So this is such a good question and actually such a common thing because sometimes what we can do is we sometimes just like over tense our neck and we'll reach with our head first as we're doing a crunch. So just imagine I'm doing a crunch or any type of sit up. We're trying to reach for our head a little bit more. So what I usually recommend for folks is to try to like tuck your chin out a little bit. Don't like give yourself the double or triple chin like I have right now, you know, like you're taking a selfie. Don't try to do that, but do try to kind of, you know, engage your chin just a little bit down, and that will help. That will basically help kind of neutralize or make your neck a little bit more neutral. Now, keep in mind, like I'm saying these things, and please know the neck is meant to move all around. You know, like you're supposed to have flex in your spine. Your spine is supposed to be curved. And I'm not saying like, oh, neutral is the only way to go, but I'm saying that having a little bit more of a neutral neck and being a little bit more cognizant of kind of what you're doing can help alleviate some of the aches and pains that you might be experiencing or strain that you might be experiencing. The other thing too that you can do is focus on mostly just trying to bring your like lower ribs down to your hips. So I'm real notorious on coaching this, you know, as a cue and things like that for even deadlifts and squats and whatnot, just to get a little bit more spine stability in. So what I recommend is like, as you're initiating any type of crunch or sit up, find that point where you're driving your low back into the ground, flattening out that low back at first and making this more of a point instead of reaching forward with your head. So those are a couple of cues that you can kind of try, Katie, and anyone else who might be experiencing this as well. The other thing too is for those of you who were on last year with the program, I started to kind of test out some neck routines that I was talking about with my PT, not even for me, but just for my athletes in general. And I did start to test everyone out last year on the cycle, except I did the neck exercises later in the season than I wanted to. So it was kind of like the end of the season, like late summer. This time around, I actually want to start neck exercises with our current programming coming up. So I'm going to have some neck reinforcement exercises and things like that to help strengthen the neck. Now, of course, there's going to be some caveats, like if you have any fusions, which I don't think anyone does in this group, but if you have any neck fusions or, history of whiplash and concussion, just be careful, be a little bit more cognizant of when you're starting. We're going to start with bands and doing that. And then eventually we'll get into doing like some more hand presses, some flexing. My neck actually just popped when I did that. Someone needs to do some neck exercises. But also then eventually you get into like almost like a little bit of like a plank. So you can plank on your head. That sounds awful. I know it sounds scary, but you can plank on your head on a bench or on your sofa or something like that, or even on the ground, just to get a little bit of a head lift. Now there is a little bit of that going on right now with the hamstring planking, which is why I'm having the hamstring plank so present between the core workout and the deadlifting workout or the squat workout. So I'm having that hamstring plank be present right now, just to kind of introduce and get you comfortable kind of in that planking position, because it can feel a little bit weird and it can also make your hamstrings cramp up a little bit if you're like me. Veronica, you raise your hand. Go ahead and hop in.
Yeah, so I was wondering if those neck exercises would also help with like upper back trap tightness as well, because that's another thing that I deal with too, is just, I don't know if I just hold a lot of tension there or what, but man, it's like my freaking traps are like cinder blocks. They're freaking hard all the time. So
Yeah.
that's what helpful too for those neck exercises.
Yes, it can be, because I am usually very calm on the outside, but inside it's because calm on the outside because I hold all my tension here. So like I have rocks right here. So we're trap sisters here. I know exactly. We're just so huge. But it can, so some self massage can help for sure, just to help alleviate that. Like I personally like just to, God, my hair's growing out, so I can't see. But I like to like just pinch my traps between my thumb and my forefinger. And actually I like slept a little wrong last night. So I'm a little sensitive over here. And I think you are too, based on that face. But some like self-massage can help. I'm going to start and include, because a lot of us in the group do downhill and enduro style riding, I'm going to also start to include more of a neck release protocol too for folks. And if you're like, for you, you're on the barbell program. So folks who are on the barbell program, there is going to be a barbell release where you use the barbell on your actual trap, which I know sounds kind of weird, but it can be so helpful for mobilizing like that first rib too, because that first rib can get a little junky because we're in this position for an extended period of time, especially as we're going downhill. So all of that kind of combines into just like a little bit of a cluster for muscles to be a little bit more tense, especially early in the season, because we're like, oh, okay, I'm trying to remember how to do this. Like, I don't know about you all, but I always get like first few rides, I'm always like, I'm clenched a little bit more, like all over my body. And I notice I'm a little bit more tight after certain bike rides because I'm just a little bit more cautious in the beginning of the season because I don't want to like have a disastrous start to the season. But neck exercises will definitely help with that. And there's also going to be things that I'm incorporating from a high anchor point. So the band at work that I love to incorporate as like warm-up stuff, we're going to have a higher anchor point and we're going to be bringing it down this way. And this is what can help kind of strengthen a little bit more like rhomboids, so kind of mid to upper back, a little bit more to take away pressure on kind of the traps. Okay. So yeah, great question, Veronica. But long story is, or short answer is yes, neck exercises can help with that for sure. But there's also going to be some other things I'm going to be incorporating too. And the high anchor pulls is really what's going to help too with that. So yeah, man. And especially like also when we get into full face season, like that's a whole other thing. Cause like my full face helmet is really, really light because it was the only one that fit my head. But like the other ones I tried on, are heavier. And that can also like imagine like you have a 16-pound head generally, like that's how much our head and our brain, our skull weighs 16 pounds. We have this bowling ball on our shoulders, right? It's an intelligent bowling ball, but it's a bowling ball nonetheless. And then we're putting a full face helmet on top of it and possibly even like some chest gear and things like that. It's going to be like you're just going to feel more tension because you're using your neck muscles more. Now, the reason I'm incorporating more neck muscle workouts too, and neck strengthening and stability workouts too, is because regardless, whether you're a gravel cyclist, mountain biker, downhill, whatever, should you take a spill, science has shown and research recently has shown that the stronger your neck muscles are, the better you can be at, if you do happen to hit your head, which of course I'd never want that for anyone in the group or anyone, period. You're actually able to bounce back a little bit better if you do experience a concussion. So that's another goal for like neck strengthening and things like that. Like I'm not trying to have you be like a linebacker neck, like everyone, like I don't want you to, we're not football players, but there's a reason that football players do so much neck strengthening. And a lot of these research projects are done on, football athletes and people who have high concussion risk because of the head to contact, with the ground or another player or what have you. But it also still works for, us in our sport because we're also can be potentially a high impact sport, when we do have falls and things like that. So there is a little bit of why, and hopefully knowing the why behind like the next exercises can get a little bit more buy-in too. So, all right. Any other questions? I didn't have any other questions that I received that I haven't already touched upon because I've already touched upon all of them. I can't think of anything else. No one messaged me anything between now and then. So I think we're good. I think that might just be it. And this would be good because I like the shorter length because people are more apt to kind of watch it, because I know for me, like I never want to watch recorded things that are over an hour personally, unless it's like about like a nutrition thing or something like that. Then I'm more keen on like watching it. But any questions? Any questions? No, you good? Good. All right, sweet. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and you can hang out for a second, but bye everyone. Love you, mean it.